If you've been thinking about cover cropping, but you're starting to think to yourself, there's no way I can cover crop in my climate, you are likely very wrong. So today's video, I'm going to go over how you can cover crop in an environment where your first frost date can be as soon as sometime in September, and right now it's somewhere in the middle of August, because yes, it is still possible to cover crop. Now, if you're looking for the type of cover crop, you probably already know the benefits of cover cropping, whether it's soil erosion, being able to amend said soil, use it for snow capture, suppression of weeds. I mean, the list is truly endless, and there's a reason why cover cropping is used commonly not only in agriculture but in home gardens across the world. Number one is you want to choose something that grows incredibly quick. This means fast germination and being able to quickly put on biomass. You want to have these seeds on hand, classically speaking, or very readily available, because you want to plant them anywhere between 3 to 4 weeks before your first frost date. So what you need to do to figure out what your first frost date is not Google your zone, because within a zone, people can have different frost dates. For example, Edmonton, someone had brought this up in the comment section of one of my videos, Edmonton's frost date is much later than Calgary's frost date. Regina's frost date is much earlier or much later than Saskatoon's. The list goes on and on. So just because you're in the same zone as someone does not mean your frost dates are the same. Keep that in mind. With cover cropping, the goal is never to get heads on the actual plants. So flowers and seeds is not the end goal of a cover crop. It is simply just the biomass, both below ground and above ground. Now, if we're looking for below ground biomass to deal with soil amending, for example, reducing erosion or maybe cycling in some nutrients, we can find that in things like peas, for example. Or if we're looking for upper biomass for snow capture, we're looking for something that's a little bit taller. So something like a grass would work in this case, depending on what goal you're going for. So for me personally, here in Saskatoon, we have a drought, year 2 of a drought. I would suspect next year we're going to see some relief, but not much. So my goal is going to be actual snow capture. Not so much runoff or erosion, because most of my beds are in raised beds, so that is pretty darn minimal in my case, because I have the ridges of the actual bed itself holding on to that soil. So if I'm aiming for soil capture, I'm going to go for a grass. So the crops you can go with include buckwheat, bursum clover, Australian winter peas, annual ryegrass, and oats. These all grow incredibly quick, but the key here is they germinate equally as quick. So 3 to 4 weeks from your first frost date is not much time. We can't wait for the classic 2 weeks to germinate that we sometimes see in classic snap peas, for example. We need something that germinates very quickly. So that is why we would choose these crops over some of the more classic cover crops that you do see. The benefit of being able to garden in our zone is the fact that our cover crops are very easily terminated. So if you've been doing research on cover crops and you've decided you want them, it's very likely you've heard a lot about termination or desiccation of the crop itself. There's a reason for this. The reason is that the cover crops are, again, not meant to go to seed, and they're not meant to be perennial, meaning that they come back. Their sole purpose is to terminate them. So in some cases, people will till them into the soil surface, or they will spray them. Desiccate them is what we like to call that, and this can be done organically with maybe a vinegar or something more pesticide-y like a Roundup, or we can use winter kill, and that's where our zones are better than others. So we're going to use winter kill in this case, and we're going to leave the plants in place, and we're going to utilize them. Even if we intended to use them for soil erosion, we're going to use those plants to actually capture snow, which in and of itself has a number of benefits to our gardens. When the spring rolls around, you can of course remove this biomass and compost if you see fit. You could plant in and around the biomass by moving it out of the way, or in some cases you may choose to rototill this into the soil. Again, if you're new to this channel, I don't care how you garden, I just want you to garden, so I'm not anti-tillage. So you could choose to rototill it in, which would actually help with, you know, a clay soil and breaking it up if that's the case. Now keep in mind, you don't want to rototill in too much biomass because it does take time to disintegrate and biodegrade and can take up some nitrogen reserves. But in something that decomposes easily, like peas, for example, pea husk, if you will, or pea straw, it degrades very quickly and very easily. But something like a ryegrass is a little bit more intense and tends to stick around a little longer. So if you had a pea crop, you could rototill it in, probably be a-okay. If you had a ryegrass, I would maybe second guess that and choose either to leave it on that soil surface and or compost it as needed. But overall, I actually highly recommend you give a cover crop a shot. The reason being is that cover cropping is able to give your soil some structure to it. So when things like the spring thaw or very heavy snow ends up on top of that soil before it freezes, it will not compact because the roots are taking up kind of the spaces in between that soil and holding it up against that very natural gravitational compaction that we sometimes see when we have snow, foot traffic, you know, thaw from heavy rains, whatever the case is, between now and when we get to garden again in 2024. So if you have garden fatigue, but you want to keep your soil active and moving still, then I highly recommend cover cropping. If you have any cover crop ideas or some that you have tried in your climate that is a little bit colder than your classic climate, then let me know in the comments down below. And if you're from a warm climate, you also have to let us know in the comments down below what cover crops you're using, because the comment section is usually smarter than I am. It is a community and your guys' information is always key to helping others out. So I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.